Have you ever sat by the phone, just waiting for it to ring, hoping it's your son or daughter calling, but it never does? Maybe it's been weeks since you heard from them, maybe even months. And you start wondering, did I do something wrong? Did I say something I shouldn't have? Or are they just not interested anymore? If you've ever had that aching feeling deep in your chest, like you've become invisible to your own children, you're not alone. It's a pain so many of us carry quietly, especially as we get older. And let's face it, this kind of emotional distance can hurt, even more than physical distance. You gave them your love, your time, your sacrifices. You were there for every scraped knee, every school play, every heartbreak. But now, when you're the one who could use a little company, they're nowhere to be found. This isn't about blaming or pointing fingers. It's about understanding. Because sometimes the signs are there, plain as day, but we brush them aside. We make excuses for our kids. We say, "Oh, they're just busy," or "she'll come around eventually." But deep down, we feel it. Something's changed. That's why today I want to talk with you, not at you, about the subtle but powerful signs that your children may have emotionally checked out. And more importantly, how you can protect your own peace, your dignity, and your joy. Because you matter, your love is valuable. And if they don't see it, that doesn't mean it's not there. Let's talk about the first sign, and I want you to hear me out fully before you judge yourself, or them. When your kids are no longer interested in having a relationship with you, the first thing that often disappears is effort. Now, effort doesn't mean they need to send flowers every week or call you every single day. Effort means they're trying to stay connected, trying to show they care. But if you're the one always reaching out, always calling first, always making the plans, while they just go along with it when convenient, you're carrying the relationship alone. That's not how it's supposed to be. You see, relationships, especially with our children, are meant to be two-way streets. Even if they're busy with kids, careers, or their own lives. A simple 5-minute call, a check-in text, a birthday remembered without a reminder. That's effort. That's love in motion. And when that stops showing up, it's not because they forgot how to care. It's because they've chosen not to. That's a hard truth, I know. But ignoring it won't make the pain go away. It only delays the healing. And here's what usually happens next. After the effort is gone, the excuses start. "Oh, sorry, I've just been swamped. I meant to call, but the week got away from me. I'll try to come by soon. Things are just hectic right now." Now listen, we've all been busy before. We know life can get chaotic. But when the excuses become patterns, and those patterns become silence, you have to stop taking it personally and start taking it seriously. Let me share a little story. There was a woman I met not long ago. Let's call her Grace. Grace raised 3 kids on her own after her husband passed away when the youngest was just 5. She worked 2 jobs, cooked every meal, never missed a school event. Fast forward to her late 60s, and suddenly, the calls slowed down. The visits stopped. One of her kids moved across the country and never looked back. Another would only call if she needed something. A loan, a babysitter, a favor. And Grace, sweet as she was, kept trying. Sending holiday cards, leaving voicemails, baking favorite dishes. But one day, she sat down and said to me, "I'm tired of begging to be loved. I'm tired of trying to prove I'm worth their time." That moment changed everything for her. She didn't stop loving her children, but she stopped shrinking for them. She stopped apologizing for existing. And you know what happened? She started living for herself again. Gardening, painting, meeting new friends. She didn't close the door on her kids. She just stopped standing in the doorway, waiting for them to come in. Now let me ask you something gently. Are you standing in that doorway? Are you waiting for a knock that may never come? Another sign that your kids may not be emotionally present is when the conversations, when they do happen, feel shallow, like you're only allowed to exist in a limited capacity. They talk to you only when they need information, your medical history, recipes, where the old photo albums are. But the deeper stuff, the "How are you, Mom?" or "What's been on your mind lately, Dad?" that's gone. You find yourself on the outside of their lives. You don't know what their dreams are anymore, or what makes them laugh. They don't ask about your health unless it becomes an emergency. They don't ask about your day because, truth be told, they may not even care anymore. Not in the way they used to. And again, it's not always because they're cruel. Sometimes life hardens people, but that doesn't mean you deserve to be forgotten. When your role in their life becomes purely functional, like a bank, a storage unit, or a backup babysitter, that's not love, that's utility. And you are more than just useful. You are worthy. Some of us carry guilt for setting boundaries. We think, if I pull back, maybe they'll pull away forever. But here's the thing, if someone only stays when you chase them, they were never really with you in the first place. You don't have to cut them off. You don't have to stop loving them. But you can stop waiting for them to see you, hear you, value you. Because your worth isn't up for debate. It doesn't disappear just because they stopped seeing it. I've talked to so many older adults who carry this invisible ache. They tell me, "I don't want much. I just want to know they still care, that I still matter. And my heart breaks every time, because you do matter." But sometimes the first person who has to believe that is you. Let me share a little story. There was a woman I met not long ago. Let's call her Grace. Grace raised 3 kids on her own after her husband passed away when the youngest was just 5. She worked 2 jobs, cooked every meal, never missed a school event. Fast forward to her late 60s and suddenly, the calls slowed down. The visits stopped. One of her kids moved across the country and never looked back. Another would only call if she needed something, a loan, a babysitter, a favor. And Grace, sweet as she was, kept trying, sending holiday cards, leaving voicemails, baking favorite dishes. But one day, she sat down and said to me, "I'm tired of begging to be loved. I'm tired of trying to prove I'm worth their time." That moment changed everything for her. She didn't stop loving her children, but she stopped shrinking for them. She stopped apologizing for existing. And you know what happened? She started living for herself again, gardening, painting, meeting new friends. She didn't close the door on her kids. She just stopped standing in the doorway, waiting for them to come in. Now, let me ask you something gently. Are you standing in that doorway? Are you waiting for a knock that may never come? Another sign that your kids may not be emotionally present is when the conversations, when they do happen, feel shallow, like you're only allowed to exist in a limited capacity. They talk to you only when they need information, your medical history, recipes, where the old photo albums are. But the deeper stuff, the "How are you, Mom?" or "What's been on your mind lately, Dad?" that's gone. You find yourself on the outside of their lives. You don't know what their dreams are anymore, or what makes them laugh. They don't ask about your health unless it becomes an emergency. They don't ask about your day because, truth be told, they may not even care anymore. Not in the way they used to. And again, it's not always because they're cruel. Sometimes life hardens people, but that doesn't mean you deserve to be forgotten. When your role in their life becomes purely functional, like a bank, a storage unit, or a backup babysitter, that's not love. That's utility. And you are more than just useful. You are worthy. Some of us carry guilt for setting boundaries. We think, if I pull back, maybe they'll pull away forever. But here's the thing. If someone only stays when you chase them, they were never really with you in the first place. You don't have to cut them off. You don't have to stop loving them. But you can stop waiting for them to see you, hear you, value you. Because your worth isn't up for debate. It doesn't disappear just because they stopped seeing it. I've talked to so many older adults who carry this invisible ache. They tell me, I don't want much. I just want to know they still care, that I still matter. And my heart breaks every time, because you do matter. But sometimes the first person who has to believe that is you. Let's pause here for just a moment. Take a breath. This conversation is heavy, I know, but you're still here. That says something about your strength. You're not giving up. You're just opening your eyes. And that, my friend, is where healing begins. So many of us were raised to believe that family means forever, that no matter what happens, your children will always need you the way you need them. But life doesn't always play by those rules. And as the years go by, we sometimes discover a painful truth. Love doesn't always flow both ways, at least not in the ways we hoped. Now, let's continue talking about the signs. Because sometimes the silence isn't silence at all. It's a message. And one of the clearest messages your kids can send, without even saying a word, is this. They only call when they need something. It starts small. Maybe your daughter calls out of the blue. You're excited, your heart lifts, you think, finally, she's reaching out. But after a few minutes, the real reason comes out. She needs a favor, a loan, help watching the kids, a ride to the airport, and once that need is met, the call ends and you don't hear from her again for weeks, sometimes months. That kind of pattern isn't just disappointing, it's heartbreaking. It makes you feel like you're only valued for what you can give, not who you are. Like your relationship is conditional, dependent on your usefulness. And for many of us in this stage of life, that's a heavy burden to carry. We want to feel seen, appreciated, loved, not used. You may tell yourself it's okay, that at least they're calling, at least they still need you. But my friend, you're not just a backup generator for when life gets tough. You're not just a wallet, a driver, or a free therapist. You're a parent, a human being, and you deserve more than transactional relationships. Another sign that your kids might not be emotionally invested anymore is something most of us try hard not to see, but once you do, you can't unsee it. It's the way they show physical and emotional distance in your presence. Have you noticed how some people just don't want to be close anymore? When they visit, if they visit, there's a stiffness, a formality. They don't reach for a hug the way they used to. Their conversations are clipped. Their eyes drift toward their phone. And even when you try to share something important, something from your heart, they rush the moment. They change the subject. Or worse, they look bored. That kind of distance is soul-crushing because it tells you, without a single harsh word, that your presence no longer lights them up. You don't feel like a welcome part of their world. You feel like a guest who stayed too long. Now I know some of you might be thinking, maybe I talk too much, or maybe I bring up things they don't want to hear. But let me stop you right there. You don't need to walk on eggshells in your own family. You don't need to make yourself small just to keep their attention. Respect goes both ways, so does love. And if someone can't even meet you with a warm embrace, a kind smile, or genuine curiosity about your day, that's not your fault. That's a choice they've made. And here's something else that often goes unnoticed until it starts to feel like a slap in the face. You notice how your kids light up for others. Their energy changes when they're around friends, co-workers, even their in-laws. You see them laugh, connect, be fully present. But when it's just you, that spark is gone. You don't need to be the life of the party, but you deserve to feel like your presence is appreciated. When your child treats everyone else with attention and warmth, but gives you cold leftovers of their time and energy, that hurts. And it's not something you should ignore. Let's talk about one more sign for today. And this one is especially tough because it's the kind that keeps you up at night. It's when you realize that if you stopped calling, texting, or reaching out altogether, you're not sure they'd even notice. That's not just sad, it's devastating. Because relationships take two people. They require investment, time, effort. And when you're the only one making the phone calls, sending the birthday messages, or asking to meet for lunch, it starts to feel one-sided. And eventually, it starts to feel pointless. Many parents in their 60s, 70s, and beyond fall into the same trap. They tell themselves, it's just how things are these days. Young people don't pick up the phone, they're too busy. But I want to challenge that thinking just a little, because people make time for what matters to them. They remember to call when it's someone they want to talk to. They make plans for people they miss. They respond to the ones they respect. If your child goes days, weeks, or even months without reaching out, and shows no curiosity about your life, your health, your feelings, that's not busyness. That's disinterest, plain and simple. And I know facing that kind of truth can feel like a punch to the chest. But sometimes you have to look reality in the eye before you can decide how to respond to it. Now please hear me when I say this. This isn't about giving up on your kids. This isn't about bitterness or revenge. It's about choosing peace, choosing yourself, choosing to stop pouring from a cup that's been empty for far too long. You don't have to chase anyone, not even your own child. You can still love them, but from a healthy distance. You can still pray for them, hope for them, even leave the door open. But you don't have to sit by that door every day, waiting, because life is still happening, right now. And there are people out there who would love to talk with you, listen to your stories, laugh with you, share a cup of coffee. But you have to stop waiting for the wrong person, to start appreciating the right one, you. It's okay to step back. It's okay to stop initiating. And it's more than okay to put your time and heart into the people who make you feel alive, not drained. You've made it this far, and I hope you're beginning to see this not as a message of sadness, but of strength. Because it takes strength to see the truth and not let it break you. It takes wisdom to recognize when it's time to stop knocking on a door that may never open. But most of all, it takes courage to turn around and build a life that isn't dependent on who does or doesn't call you anymore. And let me remind you again, you are not alone. Not in this hurt, not in this stage of life, and certainly not in this healing journey. You are loved, you are worthy, and you still have so much life ahead. Sometimes the hardest part isn't what your kids say, it's what they don't say. It's not the argument or the disagreement that stings the most. It's the silence after, that long, empty space where connection used to live. You remember when they used to tell you everything, when you knew what was going on in their lives, who they were dating, what they were excited about. Now, you feel like an outsider looking in, and every once in a while you catch yourself wondering, when did I stop being part of their world? Let's keep talking, because there are a few more signs that deserve your attention, not to hurt you, but to free you. Another clear indication that your kids may no longer be emotionally invested is how they act around others. And I'm talking specifically about moments when they openly show affection, kindness, and interest toward people right in front of you, just not toward you. You see them hug friends tightly, smile warmly at their in-laws, even check in regularly with acquaintances. But with you, it's cold. Short responses, minimal interaction, maybe even an eye roll or sigh when you bring something up. This kind of behavior sends a message, whether they realize it or not. And that message is, you are no longer a priority. Now you might be tempted to make excuses. Maybe I'm being sensitive. Maybe I caught them on a bad day. But when this becomes a pattern, it's no longer accidental. It's a habit. And habits are powerful. It's painful to watch your child give their best to others while giving you what feels like leftovers or nothing at all. And yet, many of us sit through those dinners, those holidays, those awkward family visits, pretending everything is fine just to keep the peace. But keeping the peace shouldn't mean sacrificing your self-worth. You deserve to be treated with dignity and kindness. You're not asking for praise or special treatment. You're simply asking to be seen, heard, valued. And that leads me to another difficult truth that many parents face. When your children treat you more like a friend than a parent, but not in the good way. Some of you know exactly what I mean. You've become the person they confide in when things go wrong in their life, but only to vent. They come to you for emotional comfort, but only on their terms. They don't ask how you're doing. They don't check in on your feelings. They don't share their joy or include you in their wins. You're more like a counselor than a companion, and sometimes not even that. You might find yourself listening for hours to their stories about problems at work or fights with their partner, but they never ask about your day, your pain, or your joys. It's always one-directional. This creates a dynamic where you're giving emotionally, but not receiving anything in return. And eventually, that takes a toll. Some parents get stuck here, thinking, well, at least they trust me enough to talk to me. And yes, that's something. But trust without respect or inclusion is not a full relationship. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you shouldn't have to. Now, one of the most heartbreaking signs, perhaps the one that brings the most confusion, is when a child tells you they're not ready for a relationship with anyone, but then you find out they're dating someone new, starting a family, building a life with someone else. You remember that moment when they told you they needed space, or that they were working on themselves, or that they just weren't in the place for a relationship right now. You gave them that space. You waited patiently. You hoped. And then you see photos online, or a distant relative mentions it in passing. Suddenly you realize they were ready for a relationship, just not with you. That realization hits hard. It's like your heart drops through the floor. Because all this time, you believed they needed time to heal. You thought maybe they're overwhelmed or going through something. You made excuses for their absence. But the truth is, when someone truly wants to be in your life, they don't make you guess. They don't keep you waiting on the sidelines. This moment, this wake-up call, isn't meant to make you bitter. It's meant to bring you clarity. Because when you stop chasing the hope of maybe someday, you open the door to something more powerful: peace. You don't need to compete for a place in your own child's life. You don't need to fight to be included. If they wanted to share that life with you, they would. And yes, sometimes people grow distant because they're struggling, or hurt, or confused. But even then, love leaves a trace. It leaves a note, a message, a breadcrumb. And if you've been staring at silence, it's time to stop waiting for something that might never come. Here's the truth that so many of us learn later in life. Sometimes your peace comes not from fixing the relationship, but from releasing the expectation. You can still love your child and accept that they may never love you back in the way you need. You can hold space for their return, but stop building your life around their absence. You can honor the parent you've been without holding yourself hostage to the child who stopped showing up. You've done more than enough. You've tried. You've reached out. You've given grace. But now it's your turn to live fully, to laugh again, to spend time with people who light you up, to rediscover hobbies, passions, and simple joys that have nothing to do with whether someone calls or doesn't. You may have felt like a forgotten parent, but you are not forgotten by life. This next chapter, however long or short it may be, is yours. And it's not too late to write it with joy, freedom, and peace. Let go of what's not yours to fix. Let go of guilt you didn't earn. Let go of the illusion that if you just try a little harder, they'll come back. And instead, come back to yourself. Take the walk. Plant the garden. Say yes to the lunch invitation. Join the book club. Talk to someone new at the coffee shop. Spend time with people who see you, hear you, and care. You are not just someone's mother or father. You are a whole person, with stories, wisdom, humor, heart, and soul. And you deserve more than waiting. You deserve to be cherished. You deserve to be alive, not just surviving the silence, but finally listening to the beautiful sound of your own voice, your own laughter, your own life. So take a deep breath and take that first small step forward. You've come this far, and I want to say something you may not have heard in a long time. I see you. I really do. The heartache you've carried, the questions you've asked in the quiet of your own mind, the tears you never showed anyone. They're real, and they matter. You didn't imagine the distance. You didn't make up the silence. You're not being dramatic or oversensitive. You're a parent who gave your love unconditionally. And now you're learning that love doesn't always come back the same way it was given. That realization, it's not easy. It changes something in you, but it doesn't have to break you. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Your child's behavior doesn't define your worth. You may have made mistakes. We all do. You may not have done everything perfectly. But who has? What matters now is how you choose to move forward. And that choice begins with reclaiming the one thing that so many people forget in these situations: your dignity. Dignity isn't about pride. It's not about putting on a strong face or pretending you're not hurt. It's about remembering who you are outside of the roles you've played. It's about stepping out of the shadow of someone else's rejection and standing fully in the light of your own existence. Some people will say, but they're your children, you can't give up on them. And they're right. You don't have to give up on loving them, but you can give up begging for crumbs of attention. You can give up the idea that you have to earn their love all over again. You can stop shrinking yourself to stay in their lives on their terms. Let go of the chasing. Let go of waiting for the phone to ring. Let go of trying to decode their moods, their silences, their excuses. Instead, lean into the people who do show up. Maybe it's a neighbor who always smiles and waves. Maybe it's the friend who sends a text just to check in. Maybe it's someone you meet at your local senior center, or someone you've chatted with online who made you feel seen. Let those people into your life. Let that energy grow. You see, emotional rejection from your children can feel like the ultimate betrayal. But it doesn't have to be the end of your story. Your life is still wide open. And I know, it can feel lonely at times, especially when you're sitting at a table that used to be full. When birthdays go by without a call, when holidays pass and you're left with memories instead of presents. But loneliness can be transformed. It doesn't vanish all at once, but it softens when you stop waiting and start building something new. Go for the walk, even if it's just around the block. Volunteer somewhere that needs a kind heart. Pick up the book you always meant to read. Paint something, bake something, sing, even if it's just in the kitchen, while the tea steeps. These may seem like small things, but they're not. They're life, and it's still yours to live. And yes, the door can stay open if your children decide to return, not just with words, but with real effort. You can welcome them. But don't stand at the door, looking out every day, missing what's already right around you. Because here's what I want to leave you with. And I hope you carry this message close to your heart. Your value does not decrease just because someone else refuses to see it. You were valuable the day they were born. You were valuable when you kissed their foreheads goodnight. You were valuable when you sacrificed for them, worried over them, and loved them more than they could ever know. And you are still valuable now. Don't measure your life by who stays and who goes. Measure it by the love you gave, the kindness you held on to, the way you got up every morning and chose to keep going, even when it hurt. You're not too old to start again. You're not too late to be happy. You're not done. If no one else tells you this, let me be the one to say it. You are worthy of joy, of peace, of love that doesn't come with conditions. And if your children can't or won't give that to you, it's okay to stop chasing it. It's okay to let go. That doesn't make you cold, it makes you brave. Take a moment right now. Breathe deeply. Let the tension in your shoulders fall away. You've carried this long enough. Now it's time to live. If any part of this conversation has spoken to you, if you found yourself nodding through tears, or even just sitting quietly, feeling seen for the first time in a while, I want to invite you to be part of something. You're not alone. There's a whole community of people just like you, mothers, fathers, grandparents, who have felt this ache, who've walked this path, and who are learning, like you, to heal and grow in new ways. If this video helped you, please share your story in the comments. You never know who you might comfort just by saying, "Me too." Your voice matters. And I read every single one of your messages. And if you'd like to be reminded that your life is still beautiful, still meaningful, still full of new chapters, go ahead and click that like button. Subscribe to this channel, Strong Elderly Life, for more videos that speak to your heart and strengthen your spirit. Because we believe in something powerful here, that life after 60 isn't the end, it's a beginning. You've earned the right to live on your own terms. So here's to you, to your resilience, to your quiet strength, to your dignity. Here's to living your best life, no matter what or who you had to leave behind to find your peace. And here's to the truth that will never change. You are still worthy of love, and you always have been.